This is a picture of Fort Sumter. This fort remains important to us today because it housed the beginning battle of what could have been the destruction of our nation. By looking at this map, you can see that Fort Sumter, even though it was a Union fort, was essentially surrounded by Confederate forts. The fort is located on a small little island in the Charleston Harbor, which is within the rebellious state of South Carolina. This man, Major Robert Anderson, was the top dog in command of the Fort Sumter. General Beauregard, on the other hand, commanded the Confederate forces that attacked. For 34 hours, the Fort Sumter suffered through an all-out bombardment. Unlike the Confederates, who had a lot of resources right at their fingertips, Fort Sumter's inhabitants had to be choosy about the use of their gunfire. Intriguingly enough, the Battle of Fort Sumter became a metaphor for the country's unity, and it was felt in waves throughout Charleston and the rest of the nation. People clustered onto rooftops in Charleston to watch the battle, and so they were privy to a few interesting sights. For one thing, General Beauregard ordered his troops to set the fort on fire, and then calmly offered his assistance to Anderson in quelling the blaze. Anderson declined, but it was seen as a merciful offer by some and a very haughty type of offer by others. Also, it is unlikely that the people of Charleston saw much more than the actual explosions, let alone hear the cries of the individual men, but still, the Confederates issued yet another controversial movement. When the situation became downright dire for Fort Sumter and the Union refused to surrender, the Confederates cheered, not jeered, for the Union's bravery, even as they continued to fire at them. When they heard of this, the people of the country finally saw what they had not before, that it was as if people were being ripped apart from each other by their heartstrings, and so they were willing to murder even if they were sympathetic to those in the fort. Any unity that the people had enjoyed, the country finally accepted how invalid this was. Anyway, the bombardment of the Fort Sumter continued, and so the Confederates eventually won. As the news rippled throughout the country, a majority was shocked that the Civil War was becoming a reality. For the Northerners, this southern initiation of the war proved to them that the South was willing to fight. Dedication was another factor that contributed to the country's initial disbelief, as both the Union and Confederacy felt that they surely had the greater determination to win. Not only that, though, but prior to the battle, much of the Confederacy had assured themselves that the North would not even put up a fight. According to the South, there was a difference between compromising Northern interests through succession and merely asking to be left alone. In short, the battle shocked much of the country into seeing this conflict as a reality, not another tiresome problem that could eventually be brushed out of the room. As do the most pivotal turning points and influential starting points in history, it provided a new view of the conflict at hand that amazed some and angered others. Back at the actual battleground, generous terms of surrender had been both issued to and accepted by the Union. In the North, the public's fury at the Confederacy absolutely skyrocketed. The Northerners felt that this Southern initiation of the war was evidence supporting the highest of treasons, and even those who were underage could not wait to put the Southerners back in their place. Unexpectedly, due to this sudden renewal of anger, President Lincoln's call for 75,000 volunteers was actually exceeded. On the other hand, the Southerners were jubilant after the battle. To many, the battle seemed like the Confederacy's stamp of approval on warring with the North, and so they could finally embrace such a concept. Overall, the Battle of Fort Sumter provided a new perspective on the conflicts that had been brewing in America. To some, it was a magnificent relief to finally be at war. For others, they lived in fear of the destruction that such a war might bring. Regardless, though, not only did the Battle of Fort Sumter very literally kick off the Civil War, it swiftly put the concept of it and what was fair and what was crossing a line under examination.